right, I'm here up in Lake Nojiri in Japan, northern Japan, with my buddy Scott, and we're talking about angry is stupid. Yeah, basically, angry is stupid. Yeah.
So let's just keep talking about it. So I've been talking with so many guys, and I've been noticing it.
Yeah.
I've been noticing it in so many guys.
What do you notice? Like exactly?
Somebody trolls them, they get triggered, and then they have a tantrum of some kind. That's it may take a day or two for them to calm down, but afterwards they're sheepish and kind of embarrassed about the fact that they, lost their temper, but really they were trolled. And I'm not talking about on the internet necessarily, but by like a wife or a girlfriend or a coworker or somebody that from one of your groups, or even a friend. They'll push that other person will push that button, and they know that especially a wife knows, or a parent, a mother. Okay, the mother is the number one thing, or a father too, but a mother is the one that knows how to troll better than anybody else. They push that one magic button whenever they want to, and they get this reaction from the guy. And, as I was saying to you, that, Caleb Jones has got that incredible video about anger, that...
But let's talk about, not so much about the person doing it. It's the reaction that's so interesting to me. Like the guy, you're talking about the guys, the problem they have, being sheepish, and like, the inability to control. You know what I mean? Like, because there's two sides, right? There's always the side of the person doing it, why are they doing it and all that. But I think really what never is really talked about is what we can do about it. Or how different people react, or what options we have, or how it looks from a long-term perspective, or from the outside. You were really saying, like, basically...
Well, they used to say, count to 10.
Guys don't have... No, but you were saying, like, guys, like, these days don't have the ability to control their anger. It's the biggest problem, you were saying, with young guys.
Well, I'm to some extent, I'm talking about the people that I know who are, like, addicts and, drug alcoholics.
But the thing is that all those guys are just... To me, they're just a cross-section of humanity. Just random people. I would say that those problems that you encounter in that group, they're exactly the same everywhere else.
Sure.
There's nothing unique about that.
But the point that I'm trying to make is, I've been aware that, like, anger as a character defect is a big problem. I've been aware of that for a long, long time.
What happens when people do it? What's the result that is not good?
Well, the result is that you might kill somebody. That's the worst thing. You could get yourself into, a physical thing where you're going to end up in jail, or, it could be a road rage incident. I mean, we certainly see like tons of this stuff on YouTube and Instagram of all these like incidents, especially in America, where people are going berserk over things. They're getting trolled in the convenience store or the Starbucks by something that the barista says, and they're going ballistic. And the thing is that, the simplest interpretation is you're just making a fool of yourself when you do that. You look stupid when you do that.
Yeah, but you're saying they have a problem. And then you said that I don't do that, or I'm different. How do you see me in this prism? Like, what have you seen, like you were saying earlier?
Well, I just don't, you personally, I can't really picture you being the kind of person that is easily trolled into a rage, from hanging out with you. We've been like occupying the same tiny cabin like for months on end, and I've never seen you get triggered at all, even with freaking Felix Unger here. We had Felix Unger here that whole summer, and he's like fussing around about everything and constantly on your case for not washing the dishes. But you never got triggered at him at all,
He was all right. He was all right.
Yeah. He wanted to come up. I said you were going to be here, so I said, well, where's my invite? I said,
In the mail.
It's
in the mail.
It's in the mail. Yeah. But the thing is that the key point here is that in your relationship with loved ones, especially like family, spouse, girlfriend, kids in particular, that kind of letting the anger out is extremely destructive. It creates a lot of scar tissue in the relationships that doesn't ever go away.
Right.
That's one point. And I think that's like the most important point in this whole thing is that if you're going to get angry, go and let the anger out somewhere else, but you shouldn't pollute the atmosphere at home.
I would say on that one, I think it's the same as everything else. Like, I think you can't just be funny in one situation, or you can't just be like social. You have to learn to be social. You have to improve your humor in general. If you want to have good manners at home, I think that the outside totally matters, because it's your total being that you're working on. You're working on your total, like, there's something, I think that when you have a problem with something, it means that you're seeing things incorrectly. Like, there's something you're not seeing, like in the situation. You're not somehow, maybe you're not seeing the options, or you're not seeing their motivation, or you're not seeing what it's causing you. There's something you're not seeing, right? So whenever I think of like how to change one thing, I always say, okay, I go into like, what is it? Like, I think one of my main perspectives, which I said before we started recording, is that I think that, like, in my house, or I would say growing up, I didn't think that, as a kid, I watched people be angry around me, like a lot. Yeah. There was a lot of angry people around me. Sure. And I didn't see them getting what they wanted. Yeah. And I saw like a lot of hurt people. I saw a lot of wasted time as a kid. And so I thought, that's stupid. That was like super obvious to me that it was totally not productive. Like, it wasn't helping them. And then there was this whole thing of making amends and everything. Like, that's one thing I got a major beef against the program, the 12-step, is that everybody's always, they believe, I'm going to say Christians, so basically Westerners. Yeah, Westerns are basically Christians from their perspective. Christians believe that no matter what you do, all you got to do is say you're sorry or pay them back and you're fine, right? And that's not how it works. When you do something to somebody, maybe in a theoretical world, it could change. Like, for example, if you steal money from somebody, theoretically you could pay them back and everything would be the same again. But it wouldn't. Everybody knows it would never be the same. Once somebody's taken something that they fucking took it, right? Yeah. Then you never look at them the same. There's just no way. Yeah. And I think it's the same way with anger, is with people, is one of the reasons why people don't work on it is because they don't understand that they are destroying relationships. Like, they're literally just burning them to the ground. Yep. And you can stay with that person. Yep. So physically, zombie can be together. Yep. But the feeling is gone. Yep. Once that, once certain lines are crossed, And I know that it's not politically correct, or it's not politically correct. It's not socially. Westerners will always say, well, I had a huge thing with somebody, and then, I made amends, and then he forgave me. I would immediately be cynical about that and say, wait, what was it that, like, why did that guy forgive you? So, for example, let's say you're very wealthy and you're always like treating everybody.
Right.
And then the guy, you get angry at somebody and they forgive you.
Yeah.
There might be another reason, right?
Yeah.
Like, generally people just, I would even go so far as to say smart people don't forgive, because dumb people just believe anything you tell them, right? You just make a campaign promise, run for office, they'll vote for you, right?
Yeah.
And then next year they'll forget. They'll vote again because you said the right things.
Yeah.
But in reality, smart people look at how you act and they're like, wait, this person did this.
Yeah.
And, there wasn't one of those once in a lifetime changes going on. Because there is once in a lifetime changes, but they are just that. They're they're only once, right? And you can't, I guess there's two types of people: stupid people, and then deluded people. Those deluded people, they will immediately believe this is a once in a lifetime thing. Like, oh, he stole it, or he lied to me, or he, got angry. But he's now turned to, he's changed his life totally, turned to Jesus, whatever he did. Yeah. It's just all bullshit. It's like, the only way once in a lifetime thing, like, is if you wait a whole lifetime to watch that guy.
Yeah.
That's the only real way.
Yeah.
It is so whenever somebody says, like, I can't believe how dumb people are, like, it's how naive people are. Like, I'll go to a group, right? And then somebody will say, oh, I had this huge realization this morning, that I shouldn't do this anymore, or this is happening, or whatever. And I immediately think to myself, wait, this guy had a realization this morning? Like, if I said, okay, I had a realization 10 years ago, right? Or 20, 30 years ago, and I quit drinking, right?
Yeah.
That means something. People can actually trust that to a certain extent, because they say, wow, 30 years. Now, maybe he'll go back. Maybe it won't matter in the end. But there's a good chance 30 years that's real. There's a decent chance. Still not completely real, but it's a good chance. But when somebody says something, people these days, they'll just say, oh, this morning I read this article and, I decided, and then, you look at their life, none of their words have any meaning at all. So I think the first thing I think people should do is never, ever say anything when you think you're going to change. You have to start to, I guess this is kind of advice if somebody's trying to work on it, is the first thing I'd say is you want to look at your whole entire life. Because how you treat the guy at the gas station, believe it or not, that guy remembers.
Sure.
And everybody thinks they don't. Everybody will say, oh, people are too selfish. They don't have time to watch me. Oh, please. When I go out, people will point out that guy's a total fucking asshole. That chick, she stole the house from the guy. Oh, that guy over there, he fucking built that second story when that guy was on vacation next door. Yeah. Fuck him. Never smile at that guy. Yeah. Like, these are the type of conversations I have with real people. Yeah. Walking on, these are real stories. Yeah. Walking around in a certain neighborhood with somebody I know. Right. And I realized, like, no, people don't forget. No, people are watching, and they do remember. So the first thing I'd say, the guy at the gas station does remember. And the second thing is that even if he changes jobs or whatever, he's going to remember it anyway. He just won't know you anymore. But he'll remember, oh, there was this asshole came in the store. Yeah. How many times have you said that? Like, total fucking prick. You don't know his name. Yeah. You never saw him again, but you're telling a story about him because he really upset you. Right. And I think there's really lasting damage from these anger things. I think now here's the scary part. I think what you should do is when someone does something that you consider not cool, you need to pull back into yourself. And essentially you need to think, does this guy deserve to die for this? Right? In other words, am I going to do something about this? Like, am I serious about this? Am I going to divorce her? Am I going to move countries? Is there going to be one person living on the planet? If you're not going to make any decision on it, then you're not going to do anything, right? So forget that part. The revenge fantasies, most Hollywood movies actually are about this very thing we're talking about. I believe this. Go watch a Hollywood movie. Most of them are revenge movies. Or even if it's not a revenge movie, there's a revenge scene where the guy who did everything wrong finally is led away in chains, and everybody's laughing at him, and he's screaming, and he's a lunatic, right?
Yeah.
And he's fully caught, and he's fully busted. And the reason why we love these movies is A, because it never happens.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen in real life. Yeah. And then 2, it's because our lives are so boring and miserable that we just wish there was some planet we could live on where it was fair. And that's what the movie gives us. Yeah. But what I think you should do when you watch a movie like that is, if you're resonating with it, you immediately say, wait a second, I need to make some major changes in my life right now. If I'm enjoying this river, you know what I mean? Like, I got something going on. And maybe it's move countries, maybe it's get divorced, maybe it's whatever it is. It's like, if your life is not going, these are things that tell you your life is not going well. I think they're very meaningful, actually. So you look at yourself and you say, wait, what am I doing with my fucking life? Like, who have I become? What am I doing here? Like, this is so weak. To get into a revenge movie is the ultimate in weakness for me, because it shows. Now, I think there's nothing wrong with getting revenge. That's the other flip side of this, is you don't want to do anything without thinking. But if something needs to be done and nobody has the balls to do it, including the police, then I think you should do it. Plan it out and do it. So if something is real, and let's say there's a real wrong going on, right? This is what we do in wars. There's a leader, he's unacceptable, and we say, we got to take him out. I think we, as humans, we're built with that, as men especially, we're built with that same decision-making, guillotine thinking. I think we should keep that. I think that's important for men, is once in a while when somebody does something, you don't want to give it away, right? But you want to think very calculating about that situation and really decide, is this worth taking action? Because very few things are worth taking action, right? But what most people do, they spend their whole life just basically getting a set at like you said, the Starbucks guy. And they're just like blowing up at every stupid thing. And they're watching all these movies. It's because they can't control their emotions, so they are constantly being controlled by outside forces. And they don't have the balls to do something important. They just don't have the balls. And I'll tell you, here's an example. So when I was in China, right, I used to walk by, and I talked about this in a previous episode. I used to walk by these children begging, right? And, when I first saw them, I'd give them money, right? And then after a while living there, I realized that the kid didn't look like the mother, Yeah. And I thought, ooh, that's strange. So I did research about it. Turns out they're not related. So then I said, well, where does this kid come from? Well, what is the situation? Where does it? Then I found out that there's an thousands of year old kidnapping system in China that is very well established. And what you do could be something simple as a domestic helper having a dispute over her income. And she's angry and she takes the kid as the ultimate revenge to the parents. And then she brings it to a certain street corner. There's a certain street corners in China. And you just stand there with the kid. That's all you got to do. You don't have to say a single word. Stand there with the kid. Somebody will come up and hand you money, a certain amount of money, and they will take that kid. No word spoken, Nothing. Then they'll take that kid to another street corner, and that's the second street corner. This is all part of a thousands of year old system. The second street corner, they know it's the second. The first one was that corner. It's a specific corner. And so the second one, they know that the person that has the kid doesn't know who the parents are. Right? So then they take the kid from there to another part of the country. So even if it gets traced back, the people in this chain, the 5 corners they go to, nobody knows where the kid came from originally.
Right.
So even if you tortured them or gave them the death penalty, they couldn't tell you because they literally don't know, because the system is so set up to be so perfect. I mean, perfectly evil, right? And then those are the kids that end up begging in Shanghai. So once I found all this out, I would walk down the street and I would see these kids, and I started to think about their lives, you know. I thought about, this kid doesn't even know his own name. He's being used to make money and probably abused in every way, right? Because he's got strangers who are making money off of him. Of course, they're going to do whatever they want. Nobody can stop them, right? The kid needs them, essentially. There's no other adult, right? So the kids have been taken from the only person in their life that will love them permanently. The parents don't know where they are, and the kids don't even know their city. They don't know their name. They don't know their parents' names. They don't know anything because they're small. They do it when they're small. So anyway, I traced the whole thing. And then once I figured the whole thing out, I went on a personal vendetta against these guys. I'm not going to get into the details, but I was a force to be reckoned with for these guys because I decided it was worth it, right? So I think that's the thing. You got to be willing to do stuff. If it's enough, is it wrong enough to do something, to take a risk, right? Personal risk, right? Is it enough to do something? And if it is, don't say a single word. You don't want to say a word anyway, because if it's not worth it, then it's not worth it. But if it is worth it, then it's like, imagine you're dealing with the cartel. They're very dangerous. You don't want to let them know that you're onto them or anything, right? Because they're going to take you out in 2 seconds, right? Same with these people. These really evil people, they will take you out. They're no joke. These guys are serious. There's serious money. Police are involved. Everybody gets paid off. It's a very serious thing. If you do take them on, like I did, you got to do it very fucking smart. You better be smart if you're going to do this, for one thing. And you better be calculating if you're going to do something. But that type of thing gave me so much confidence in myself because I stopped walking by things, just walking by, and I realized I could make a difference. I could make a difference. I didn't change the whole world, but I did change some people, right? And so I think that's the flip side of the anger comes from the feeling of justice or something's not right. I think the key thing is you need to realize how meaningless all this stuff is, and then to store it up for when you really want to do something. I think that's when you go outside the law. That's when you have to really realize the limits of society. Society is limited. Okay, they're limited by basic rules, right? So in other words, they can't have exceptions in the law, right? The law has to be the law. So that's why people get off on what are they called? They get off on some small thing. The evidence was, collected wrongly or something, right? But the person deserves to be punished, right? So I think as a man, I think that's the thing is like, when you're talking about the real anger as a man is when I think men are the enforcers. We're the bottom line. Women don't care. Women will walk by injustice all day. They won't do anything. because it's just not in their nature. But men, there's a bottom line for guys. I think that's what guys are lost. That's why they're so lost in this small stuff. That's why they're so lost in the coffee, the wrong name is on there, somebody called them the wrong pronoun, or, realistically, some guy cut them off, or, somebody didn't respect them, It's because there's deeper issues, Either they don't have the a lot of times when people, the don't respect thing, whenever somebody says that someone doesn't respect them, who says that the most? Homeless guys. Homeless guys are very obsessed with being respected. In fact, if you want to make friends with a homeless guy, go up to a homeless guy and give him respect and watch what happens. You're going to be amazed because it's the one thing he craves, right? Nobody gives it to him. It's because he's obsessed with it, because that's the thing he doesn't get. Whereas somebody who's doing the right things in life, he doesn't care about being respected. It doesn't matter to him. It matters a tiny bit, but it really doesn't matter because he fucking knows he deserves respect. Like a father doesn't care if he's not getting respect in the moment, because he cares on a small scale, but in a real scale, he's like, hell no. You just are too young to understand.
Well, I think
the real deal.
If somebody's
right?
disrespectful, like for me personally, where I am in my life,
I think we're talking about a different disrespect, and I get what you're saying. Yeah.
If somebody's disrespectful, I look at them and just say, well, there's something off with this person. They don't understand the proper way to communicate as an adult, right? There's something missing in their whole understanding of the social situation, and it's not my problem. The problem is not with me; it's with them. So I don't really care.
But that might be just exactly what I said. You've done a lot of right things in life. You built your own house here in Japan. You did a lot of things. You did a lot of stuff right in your life. And that's why it doesn't bother you. But somebody who hasn't, believe me, it's different. They don't see it that way. You see it that way because of who you are, right? But everybody listening to this is going to be coming from a different level of having done the right thing in their life, right? So everybody will be affected by it differently. But if it really is affecting you as a man, again, just like anger, you got to go deeper and say, why, maybe this guy is right. Maybe I don't deserve respect. I haven't done the things I need to do. And I need to make some serious fucking changes, Because sometimes when people criticize this, that's an opportunity, right? And other times it's just like, the guy's got a problem. Because you're like, I know I'm fine. Down to the soul, I know I'm not perfect, but I'm fine, right? I deserve respect, right? Yeah. So you don't have that. That's just like solid gold there. But that's coming from where you are, yeah. But I think the anger thing, I think too, one thing we haven't said, I think it's important, on the topic of Japan, I think American men are much more feminine in a way than Japanese men, in the sense that Japanese men don't let themselves go off on small things like we do. Like our culture lets us go off on things.
Well, you won't see Japanese guys breaking down in these kind of fits of anger.
Yeah.
They'll generally repress it.
Right.
About the only time I've ever seen, and I'm a suburban person. I don't like hang out in bars and that kind of stuff. But out in my neck of the woods, the only times I've ever seen people in Japan in all these years actually raise their voices and seem like they were going to fight was over dogs in neighborhoods. Usually dogs misbehave and then the dog walkers get angry at each other. But that's about the only time that I've ever seen any kind of people losing control here.
Wow.
And I remember Yeah. I've seen some pretty people yelling and screaming at each other about dog behavior. You know, maybe one is a dog walker and the other's like a non-dog walker, or maybe it's two dog walkers and, you know, one dog is like really misbehaving. And then people will, and maybe it's because of the agency of the dogs, the lack of agency of the dogs, or, you know, the dogs are some kind of like intermediary there. You know, maybe the anger gets expressed through them. I'm not exactly sure, but I've seen that a number of times. But I remember before I originally came to Japan, I remember reading in a book, it's the travel trips or, you know, your preparation for Japan. The one thing it said was, no matter what happens in dealing with all of the onerous procedures in Japan, never get angry and never raise your voice.
Yes.
Because the Japanese don't respect that at all.
Yeah,
And
it's the same with Chinese and Thai, every Asian culture. Same.
You know. And so the kind of like righteous anger that you're going to see like in the, you know, some guy at Starbucks or something, it doesn't really fly here, you know.
Yeah. It's, you know, like when you, like, you see, like, for example, in China, you see more fist fights than here. But I think there's definitely like, maybe the Japanese took it to another level, but it's definitely there. In Thailand, for sure, never get angry. If you want to get anything done in your life, never get angry in public. It will not help you in Thailand. No way. It does not. The sad thing is, I've seen Westerners, because Japanese don't get angry in public, I've seen Westerners browbeat people here in Asia with anger because they know it does work, because nobody uses it. Because it's so incredibly demeaning.
They're not prepared for it.
They're not prepared. They don't have a thick skin for it. And I can't stand when I see that. I mean, unless it's life and death. Like if you're trying to bring a, you know, baby to the hospital and there's some stupid thing and you got to pull out the Gaijin anger, fine, right? You know what I mean? Like there would be things that it might be helpful, life and death situations. But when you see people do that, and once they do it more too, because they see it work, right? They see it work, you know, to get their way, because people just can't stand it. And I think it's the same way with divorce proceedings. Men just don't have it in them to be super mean for so long, and angry. But women do. That's why you can't win in a divorce case by being angry and mean. You can't, because you can't compete with a woman. There's no way you can compete with a woman. They have a capacity to hold on to that.
This is one of my reasons.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why Vladimir Putin is one of my heroes, because he's the guy that said, you know, never argue with a woman, right? And that is, I think that's that's kind of bedrock wisdom that I've taken, you know, in, you know, this stage of my life, is like never argue with a woman, you know, especially not an angry one.
Right. I think I do that. I don't think arguing in general, it's just an extension of anger. I would say that, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but I think my stance might be that arguing is the same. Like, don't argue with anybody, because it doesn't do any good. It's not going to get you to A to B.
Yeah, well,
You know.
the angry woman is definitely not going to be convinced by whatever you've got to say.
Yeah.
There's not a damn thing you can say that is ever going to move the needle in the argument, because she's going to be right. You know?
Right. And like somebody who's believes something, or you're not going to win in a traffic accident arguing about who is wrong. You're not going to win with a political argument. I would say that here's the interesting thing. With intelligent people, brainstorming and debating ideas can change minds. And you know what? I actually was a good debater in college. But it wasn't because I liked to debate. I hate debating. But I used to say when I debated, I used to say, look, and people got to know me and they realized I was telling the truth. I'd say at the beginning of the debate, I'd say, look, if you guys have a better argument, I'm just going to agree with you guys. Like, I'm not here to push a bad argument. Like, the reason why I picked this argument, I picked this side is because I think there's reason for it. But if something else comes up, that's a better argument, I'll go with that, right? But if there isn't any better arguments, then my argument stands, right? I'm going to keep on it. And then I forgot how I worded it, but I worded it in a way that people were like, had never heard in a debate. So I'll happily stand up and walk over and sit with you guys. And I was totally serious too, because that's the whole point in debate. If you're not willing to stand up and sit down with the other side, you're not debating. It's not a open-hearted debate. It's not a real debate. Like a real debate, you should be willing to change your whole life after that debate. You should be.
Yeah.
Everybody in the debate should be. It's like, okay, here's what I think is true. But hey, if this is not true and there's something better, I'm down.
Convince me.
Yeah, I'm down. But even convince me is a little bit like, I would say, like, let's talk about it. Let's bring the ideas out and let's go into the details and let's see which one is true or more true, And then, but the thing is, I would agree with people during the debate too. A guy would make a speech and I'd say, I totally agree with what he said. And then people were like, you're supposed to be debating. But the audience and the judges and the people on the other side, they saw me totally differently because the guy was fucking right. And I said he was right. So I was right. He was right. We were both right. But I was the one that was big enough to say, hey, that guy was absolutely right. I got nothing to say about that. But then the next person, if they said something totally fucked up, then I was like, well, here's the deal. Like, just like your colleague said, this is, and then eventually we would figure out the best, most biggest, truest thing, right? Whatever the biggest truth was. If it was my side, then, because I was there to learn, because maybe they were going to say something I didn't know. I might have thought some drug was the best for some disease, but then there's a new drug or there's a new procedure. You don't even need drugs. I would love to know that because otherwise people are taking drugs. They don't need them, right? It's a learning. It's like a learning thing, So I think a lot of times debate today is not even debate.
It's not debate, no.
It's just too, what is it? It's like two closed-minded, stubborn, angry people, emotionally upset.
All kind of debating tricks that are outside of the rules, and they don't even realize it.
Right.
Such as ad hominem. Ad hominem is not really. That's a sign that you've lost a debate.
Yeah.
Once you start doing ad hominem, that means you got no argument.
It used to be. Now.
Right? Yeah, it's true. Now it's like, how good of an ad hominem can you do?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you totally. You destroyed the guy. That's ad hominem. That it sums up family courts. It's an ad hominem debate.
One big freaking ad hominem.
Yeah. And whoever can be the meanest and the worst at it, the other person is destroyed, and the judge says, "Oh, they're not as good for the kid, right?" Yeah. The other person's better. Total insanity. So I can see why people would fall into it. Yeah. But I was trying to think back. I don't know if I really answered the first question about anger, because
Well, the proposition is anger is stupid. That was
yeah.
When we got started with this whole discussion.
I think
that for me, right,
the Asians have it right.
The main point that I want to make about that is if you want to go back to like a discussion or like people throwing out ideas that can change your life, this idea was something that had never been framed to me like that before. The idea that getting angry, it's not a right. It's a sign of stupidity. I'd never really grasped that, and then once I got this, it was able. I began to, work on it and began to become able to actually shut the anger down when I felt it coming up.
Oh, because you could see that it wasn't smart. It was stupid.
I could see that,
for yourself.
Basically, shut the fuck up is the other end of that sentence. Anger is stupid, so shut the fuck up. Because you're just going to dig yourself in deeper.
Well, I think there's two things. There's internal anger and there's expressing anger. And like those are two different topics. So I guess we're talking about expressing, right? I would say that even if you harbor anger, people can feel it just as much as you express it. So shut the fuck up wouldn't work for me.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's long...
Because you can't
there's derivatives,
turn off the
there's
amygdala.
like derivatives of it, like this long smoldering resentment, for example. Okay?
That's
Which is kind of the internal aspect.
That's
of it.
terrible.
But what I mean is the anger that... we were just talking about these two guys who were fighting over a girl for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Right? And I mentioned the fact that one word about the girl manages to trigger this guy into an angry rage. And that is a chemical reaction. That's biochemistry. That's like his whole, the person's whole system going into a different mode. It's going into a fighting mode. As I mentioned, about this situation. The guy, I thought the guy was going to leap across the table and actually strangle me for mentioning this girl. And that's body chemistry. That's adrenaline or some other kind of body chemistry, biochemistry that I don't even know the name of. But that's not. There's nothing cold about it. It's purely hot blooded.
Well, but that one we talked about this before we started recording, but I'll just give you guys a quick synopsis. I won't say the story because I don't want to give any people away. But basically, that was the anger. I think was from a person who is I know him, and I think he's a very insecure, small person inside, and he is very envious and jealous.
Yeah.
He's kind of like a real 3-incher. I call him 3-inchers. Yeah. He's like a total 3-incher. So you can't really be friends with a 3-incher, because they're just so prickly. Because they're so insecure that it's just totally fucking hopeless to have any kind of they just one thing can just that rage came from the fact that another guy slept with a girl who he could have had but he didn't. He had no rights to.
The guy cock blocked.
Yeah. The other guy. Basically, there was two guys, and the girl picked one guy, and neither of them had been with her, so she was totally fair game, right? Yeah. And then the one guy just couldn't handle the fact the other guy got her. Yeah. It just drove him insane. 10 years later, he's still murderous over it, because it made him feel so small. Yeah. Yeah. You know what I mean? He just felt small, and I think if you feel small, I think that's when you need to work on internal stuff, because as a man, you're not small. There are so many strong guys in history, like that have done great things, like led wars and changed the world, and they're just not alpha type guys. Like physically, if you look at them, they're not. Yeah. But they are. There's different kinds of alpha, right? Yeah. You look at the Genghis Khans and stuff. They might not look the way you think these days, especially an alpha male is supposed to look, but they are, right? And so if somebody feels that rage of that 3-incher insecure rage, I'm not saying that you should be dismissed. No, you need to really look at your history, at how that happened, how that got instilled in you. Because that's not a joke. That got instilled in you. Something happened that created that insecurity that is just red hot in you. You know what I mean? That's a red hot problem. That's the kind of problem that you go to a therapist over, actually. Yeah. Hey, but you have to be honest. You got to know what the problem is. Yeah. And then once you start to face it, you might find, you're going to find what you find, but a lot of times when you really face something that's that red hot, it's often wasn't even true in the first place. There's a lot of guys that are actually very alpha, but they had insecure fathers who attacked their own sons to make them insecure. Yeah. So even though they're totally alpha on the outside, they think of themselves as they're very insecure, extremely insecure, and you can't understand how is this possible. It's sometimes because of a very insecure, evil father who couldn't stand the fact that his son was growing up and looking more manly than him every day, and his mannerisms and his openness and his bigness as a person, right? Yeah. And the father just could not take it. So there's a lot of reasons why a guy can become a 3-incher, but you gotta, if you find yourself in that category, again, it's not a stain on your fucking soul. It's like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what the fuck happened to me? How the fuck did I get here? You know what I mean? You're like waking up out of a fucking bad dream. Right. You got to say, I got to deal with this one. Like there's no more unspoken. You got to get spoken about it. Start Googling, start doing some research. And like I say, it's often not as scary as you think. It's often something you can understand and you're like, what the fuck was I thinking? Yeah. And I hurt all these people because I was so insecure, right? That's the kind of thing that happens when you heal, right? Yeah. So it's the thing that bothers me is the 3-inchers that don't work on it. Because they're just going to fucking roll. They're just going to destroy people because they want to, because they can feel so small. And that's just, to me, that's just unforgivable. Like the father who would do that, right? It's just unforgivable.
Well, the world's full of them.
Hey, for me, the guillotine lands there. Fuck that. No, that's not acceptable for a man. You got to overcome that. That's the challenge, right? That life is fucking hard, right? Welcome to the real world. You got to deal with it. Like, stop being a 3-incher. Figure it out. Get over it. Stop hurting people. And the goal of the end of the rainbow is when you do fix these type of heavy things, deep things, everything changes. You start having more friends. You start feeling better about yourself. Like, the benefit's all to us. That's why we do these things, not for other people. It's not for the people we're going to destroy, although that's a good reason to do it. But that's not really why we do it. We do it because it's going to make our life better. We have a vision problem, right? One eye is closed, something's wrong. And then once that's open, we have more opportunity to live a good life, right? I think we've solved the world's problems here.
Absolutely.
We can just unlock the jails, just let them out. Yeah. It's time. All right. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys.